Okay, this is a rant. I will try to keep it concise, but I am a landlord and I'm privileged to be on the property ladder. I made the mistake of buying a house at the peak of prices and getting a variable mortgage when the rate for a variable mortgage back in 2022 was 1.2%. It's now 5.7%. And so it was a dumb mistake, but I acknowledge that I'm still fortunate to have a house, even though the bank owns it and I have to pay the bank for it. However, we relocated, and we wanted to keep our property, so we rented it out. And we didn't go through a property manager because that would be just unaffordable. The mortgage is about $2,000 a month. No one in their right mind is going to pay more than $2,000 a month for less than 1,500 square foot property, even though it's on just under 2 acres of land in a nice village in rural Nova Scotia. But I couldn't possibly rent it out for more than that. And so we rented it out to a family in the neighborhood. And I mentioned this in the previous video. He missed payments so many times. It was just email after email. Please pay your rent. I have to pay the mortgage. It's a really simple equation. If you don't pay the rent, I can't pay the mortgage. The bank takes the house and you lose the place that you live. It was just, I just had it. I didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to have the hassle of chasing someone to pay their rent. And this guy said that he would take care of the property. Well, he did move out. For that, I'm grateful. But he left the house in complete mess. Like, there was cigarette butts in the bedroom. He wasn't allowed to smoke in the house. There's trash all over the property that had to be cleared off by a good friend of mine. And the front door window was shattered. Yeah, these things happen. I broke a window myself when I was mowing the lawn whilst we lived there. But I guess what really bothered me was just the lies about it all. When I confronted him about the window, I was like, hey, what's this about? He's like, oh, yeah, I did it last summer. The door's in order. I can show you a copy of the order. There's no order. The rent that he still hasn't paid to this date, and the cost of cleaning the house after he left it. And so I'd like to chase it through the small claims court. You have to have like a tenant board approval that you are owed that money, and then you have to follow it up with the small claims court. I'm in North Carolina. I'm not there, but you have to have someone represent you if you go down that road. And then even if you do get the court order saying that you are owed that money, how are you gonna get the money out of that person? That's the next issue. Well, I would like to hand it off to debt collectors because that's probably my only bet, but then you 25-30% fee on whatever the amount is. The money doesn't matter. What really bothers me is the process and how it's weighted against the landlord with this preconceived notion that the landlord is above and the tenant is below. It's not that I'm what are they called? Tycoons, property tycoons or whatever. It's not the case at all. And so it's just wrong to have such a weighted stack against landlords. And with very little reprisal for a bad tenant who doesn't take care of the property, who gets away without paying their rent and just disappears without a forwarding address. I looked into what landlords could do and found a CBC article that said, what if the tenant had a marriage breakup or lost their job? These people need help. And for that, you have my sympathies. But that doesn't change the bank's perspective on my mortgage. And I'm in a position where I rent here. And if I miss a mortgage payment, I get stung with a $150 fee and then interest on every subsequent day that I don't pay that amount. Regardless, I am now in a much better position because we have a new tenant who we trust. Even though we're renting the property out for less than the interest payment is on our mortgage. And so, yeah, we're in we're in a position where we hope to keep the house, we hope everything works out, but landlords are not, greedy tycoons. Not all landlords are greedy tycoons. So that's it. The other thing, I just want to mention this in passing. I phoned the police because I thought property damage is something that they would actually follow up on. And this was while I was still in the heat of my frustration. And I spoke to a chief constable of the RCMP, and they said, oh no, this is a landlord-tenant disagreement. We don't get involved in that. I mean, my property is damaged and dirty, and the rent isn't paid. Okay, so the police don't get involved in that sort of thing. Well, I thought, well, maybe I could blacklist this guy so that another landlord doesn't have to go through what I am going through, what I have gone through. Well, if you list someone on a rental blacklist, that's using their information without their consent. The RCMP get involved in that instance. That's something you're not supposed to do. So why, when you put someone's name on a list to say, hey guys, heads up, don't rent to this guy, he's a liar and a cheat, why is that a crime? But, breaking someone's property and not paying your rent on time, that's not a crime. They don't follow up on that. I don't get that logic. But it is definitely, it feels like the deck is stacked against landlords. And I am both a landlord and a renter. Anyway, that's it. That's all I have to say. I hope that someone benefited from my rant. If you are going to be a landlord, make sure that you have a solid contract. Nova Scotia, Access Nova Scotia has a template for rental agreements. And this is important. Their terms and conditions in there are for a reason. You have to have pre-agreed clauses that say that you can communicate electronically. If you do not have that clause in your rental contract, you can't serve someone their papers when you take them to small claims court unless you find them in person, which is really hard to do when you're several thousand miles away in another country. So use the right contract for rental agreements. Yeah.